Hello and welcome to BYJU'S IAS. As part of your comprehensive news analysis today, we'll be dealing with the Delhi edition of the Hindu newspaper for 12th September 2021. If you find our videos useful for your preparation, I would request you to subscribe to the channel, and with this, we can enter into the articles. So the first article, which was on page number 7, deals with GS paper 2 and specifically polity. Under polity, the issue which the article deals with is the judiciary, specifically judicial vacancies and the pendency of cases. In India, we already know that there's a major tussle between the executive and the judiciary on the appointment of the judges, and that has now been manifesting itself in the form of large number of vacancies and pendency of cases. The focus under this article, what CJI pointed out at the National Law University, was that there's a major backlog of criminal appeals, 1.83 lakh criminal appeals which are pending in the Allahabad High Court. More than that, 68 vacancies are open in the Allahabad High Court, thereby compounding the issue that these same appeals will take more time to be cleared because the requisite number of judges are not there. So what the CJI has pointed out is a systemic issue in the judiciary at this point of time, and the data which I'm going to present in the next slide will give you more understanding. Before we understand the data itself, it would be useful to understand how judges are appointed in India. Judges are appointed in India through the system which was envisaged and created through the third judge's case. The second judge's case introduced the collegium but 1+3 formula, but the third judge's case took it a step further and introduced what is called the 1+4 formula. If somebody is to be appointed at the High Court level, the Chief Justice of that High Court plus the 4 senior most judges of that High Court then recommend a name to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court then has an option either to reject the name or accept it. And at the Supreme Court, the CJI plus 4 senior most judges then vet the name. If all judges or any 4 of them agree to the appointment of this person, this name goes to the president or the executive. And the executive at this point of time has 2 options. First, have an IB inquiry of this person and then allow him to be appointed as a judge in the High Court, or the president can send the name back to the Supreme Court for reconsideration. However, if the same name is then again reconsidered and sent to the president by the Supreme Court, then the person has to be appointed, meaning the executive only has one revisionary power, that they can send the name once back to the Supreme Court for the person's appointment. But if the Supreme Court still insists that this person needs to be appointed, he will be appointed as a judge in the High Court or the Supreme Court. So if it is about Supreme Court, then there is only this level where there you have the CJI, the Chief Justice of India, plus the 4 senior most judges according to their seniority. And if it is about High Courts, then it is just one step more, which is where the High Court itself will decide the name of the person. So you can realize that this is a cumbersome process itself, that there is 2 stages when it comes to High Court appointments, and the issue, when you will see, is much more graver at the High Court level, because out of the 1080 vacancies which are open at this point of time in the 25 High Courts of India, close to 419 are open and vacant. Thereby 40% of all judges positions are open at this point of time, and 5 High Courts have close to 54% of all its vacancies vacant. Which are these 5 High Courts? Patna 60.4%, Calcutta 55.6%, Rajasthan 54%, MP 49.1%, and AP 48.6%. What this means is that Patna is now running with 40% of all its judges it should have, thereby creating the context in which we have a lot of judicial pendency when it comes to cases and appeals. And this you can see in the form of the number of cases which are pending at this point of time in India. The pending cases in subordinate judiciary has increased from 2.92 crores in December of 2018 to 3.72 crores at the end of January 2021. The backlog of cases 30 or more years old has increased by 61% in the past 2 years. The point of the matter which I'm trying to point out here, that is why we chose this article, is that the judiciary in India at this point of time is in a grave crisis. Because when we talk about the CJI himself, how he is pointing out that there are close to 1.83 lakh criminal appeals pending in a single high court, and the fact that 68 vacancies are there in Allahabad High Court, the president himself realized at the same event that there's a major need to make sure that we have the requisite amount of judges and the cases are cleared as soon as possible. This is a very important point, and this article becomes really important for your preparation in the context of the prelims and the mains examination, because firstly you have data which relates to pendency of cases and the vacancies, and over and above that anything related to the judiciary becomes very relevant for the mains examination. This article was chosen by us to technically point out why and how judges are appointed, to technically revise the part when it comes to judicial appointments, and over and above that to understand the situation. The additional data has been given to you so as to make your coverage as comprehensive as possible, and I would expect you to use this data in the mains examination. So with this, the first article is complete. Three things we were trying to understand here. First, what the CJI was trying to point out, the larger issue of judicial vacancies and pendencies in India. Second, to give you some data related to it, to emphasize that the issue is much bigger and much graver when it comes to India as such. And over and above that, the judicial appointment process in India is a problematic one, and the memorandum of procedure which should have actually been finalized by this point of time is in limbo at this point of time. So when it comes to the judiciary, please make sure that you understand the larger issues related to it, and this article was there for that. Further, when we talk about the second article, which was on page number 12 of Delhi issue of Hindu, it is related to GS paper 3 and the PLI scheme. The PLI scheme has been covered by us from time to time over the issue of mobile industry, electronic industry. However, now the production link incentive scheme has been pushed into man-made fibers and textile sector, specifically technical textile and man-made fibers. Remember, this PLI scheme, which I'm going to explain to you what it is, does not extend to cotton and jute industries, meaning the traditional sectors are out of it. So first question is, what is the PLI scheme? When we talk about PLI, it is production linked incentive, meaning that you get an incentive according to the level of production which you do. However, there are two different variants, and the second variant is used here. When we talk about the PLI, it is mostly based on incremental growth over base year. So let's take an example. This is the larger issue of PLI. You are producing 100 phones in the base year of 2019-2020. And in the next year, you produced 120 phones for 2020-21. So what the PLI scheme says is that for these 20 phones, their value, you will get an incentive. And that incentive could range from 1 to 6%. That is totally on the company and the scheme they are under. So the PLI scheme has been used to attract a lot of mobile industries, a lot of mobile companies, and a lot of different manufacturers related to electronics. However, the success of this scheme has been seen as a very important step in making India a manufacturing nation, and now the PLI has been extended to the man-made fibers and textile industry. Remember, does not include the jute and cotton industry. So let's go into the specificities and understand what are the specific issues related to the PLI scheme here and what is the second variant, because this is not based on production, rather it is based on investment. So when we talk about the general outlay of this scheme, rupees 10,683 crore has been actually allocated in the budget for this scheme. However, this scheme is quite big, so we are expecting this outlay to increase. The scheme tries to promote industries to invest in production of 64 select products, specifically man-made fibers, which are not cotton and jute. What it deals with, rather than going for production and incremental growth on production, it rather deals with investment. What is the concept? The concept is that the investment period is 2 years and the incentive will be paid for 5 years after the first year of post-investment operation. So what are the two types of investment which are available in the scheme itself? The first entails a minimum investment of 300 crore rupees in plant, machinery, equipment, and civil works in a unit, in a factory unit, that must register a minimum turnover of 600 crore rupees once it commences operation. Meaning if you are putting in 300 crore and if it is giving 600 crore as the turnover, so your investment is 300 crores and it is giving a turnover of 600 crores, it then you become technically eligible of an incentive on your investment. The second one is the minimum investment of 100 crore rupees, where the business achieves a minimum turnover of 200 crores. So you have the first level, which is 100 and 200, and the second level, which is 300 and 600. So you can see it is more about investment. If you're making an investment into the company, if it is giving the requisite turnover, you will be eligible for incentive. So the incentive for the higher investment scheme would be close to 15% of the turnover for the first year and 11% for the second case, meaning you will get 11% incentive here and you will get 15% incentive here of this initial investment, and this will be decreasing incrementally or year on year. 1% this will go to 10%, then 9%, then 8% every year as we go forward. So it will be the highest in the first year after the investment and it will be the lowest after 5 years. The whole concept is so as to attract investment as much as possible into man-made fibers. Why is man-made fiber so important and why do we need this push? For that, the article itself points out in 2018-19, while the Indian textile and clothing exports amounted to close to $36 billion, less than one third was man-made fiber based, meaning that out of all exports, only one third was related to man-made fibers, which is technically quite low. In contrast to this, the total textile and clothing export by China, 80% of all Chinese textile and clothing export is actually man-made fiber. Man-made fiber is important because technically it is the future. Cotton and jute are based on natural resources. So man-made fiber is a very, very important sector. Similarly, of all the total global fiber manufacturing and consumption, 70% is man-made fiber related, while in India it is just 35%. When we talk about the manufacturing and consumption, 70% all around the world we see that the consumption is of man-made fiber. However, in India it is only 35%. So 35% is both the production and consumption, which means that we need a behavioral change also so that we technically consume more man-made fibers such as viscose rayon and rather not cotton and jute. But the point of the matter is that these 3 points of the articles try to point out that as compared to the world, the share of man-made fiber in India is quite less when it comes to the export, when it comes to comparing it with China, and overall production and consumption. So India is ranked 6th in the global trade when it comes to generally manufacturing textile. This is very useful information for you, that as this can come in the prelims examination. The government is set to invest close to 10,000 crore rupees into it, and they are expecting to attract 19,000 crores as fresh investment in this sector, generate 7.5 lakh jobs, and reduce the import dependence. So the point of the matter before I go forward are 3 things. First, you need to understand what is the PLI scheme, which I told you is either based on production and you get an incentive on the value of incremental growth, or here you can see it was based on investment. You get an incentive on the investment you make in the first year and the incentive automatically goes down as you go forward. Companies in their incentive of getting this form of cash back or incentive start to invest into these sectors. There's a major need to invest in the man-made fiber sector because of the fact that when we talk about the global share consumption, it is quite less, and over and above that we are still relying on cotton and jute. So this article is again to point out these 2 important points. First, the data related to it, which is about what is the share of man-made fiber. Over and above that, how we are lagging behind in the world when it comes to man-made fiber, and the position of India as a textile nation, which is 6th. And this scheme has now become the go-to scheme for the government of India when it comes to attracting and making our vision of Make in India possible. So the PLI scheme, remember, is already there in the electronic sector, mobile sector. Now it has been extended to the textile sector, specifically man-made and technical textile. A word technical textile means textiles which are used for strategic purposes, such as Kevlar, such as used for national security purposes. And these technical textiles are also the future. So these terms need to be in your mind when it comes to technical textile, when it comes to man-made fiber. Why is this scheme generally important? And I hope that now it is clear in your mind. With this, we can enter into the third topic, which deals with the Reserve Bank of India and account aggregation. This is again very important. Again, page number 12 and GS paper 3 based on economy. This is an important scheme or an important framework which the RBI has created about account aggregation. So the RBI has recently launched an aggregatory framework of how they are going to manage financial data and how now private players can actually use financial data. So this is about licensing to operate an account aggregator. But the first question which should come to your mind is, what is an account aggregator? As you would know, you have multiple accounts. You have one PAN card which is linked to your accounts. However, you have insurance, you have mutual investments, you have put some money into the share market generally, you are putting it into gold, you have taken loan from 5 different banks, meaning that you have a portfolio when we talk about your banking footprint, meaning that you could have an insurance footprint, you could have something related to mutual funds, something related to savings account, something related to fixed deposits, and something related to where you've taken credit and loan, meaning that your footprint into the banking sector itself is quite big and is diverse. What the RBI is trying to do at this point of time is that because all this data is fragmented into certain sections, meaning that the insurance company has certain amount of data, the mutual funds company or the mutual fund itself has certain amount of data. All this data is fragmented. If you've taken 4 loans from 4 different banks, all these different banks do not interact with each other. So there is always a gap. So who is an account aggregator? An account aggregator is an intermediary who will collect data from one financial entity and exchange it with another, meaning that they are going to take it and then they are going to corroborate and aggregate it, thereby making sure that your presence over and above in the whole banking sector, in the insurance sector, be it the mutual fund sector, all comes under one portfolio, one roof. Why is it important? It is important because then your credit worthiness, your presence, and how you are when it comes to managing money and giving back EMIs, how you are in using your money is now in front of a potential lender. So the account aggregator concept is based on the fragmentary data of finances, fragmentary data of credit, fragmentary data of insurance. And this new framework is now allowing private players to become an intermediary who is going to collect everything with your consent and then is going to exchange it or make a centralized system where you can see your credit worthiness very easily. So the concept is very simple. The lending bank can access details of a borrower's saving, past loan repayment record, mutual funds holding, insurance holdings through an account aggregator. A bank which is processing a loan application form for a potential borrower may want to access a variety of financial data about the borrower, thereby making sure that you are credit worthy, because this is to avoid technically non-performing assets, because sometimes people have taken 5 different loans but then try to systematically curb that data from going into the potential lender, thereby creating this chain and a trail of NPAs in which they are not giving back their loans. So the NPA concept, and over and above that, the account aggregator becomes very important. The availability of wider financial data may also help the financial institutions in offering better products tailored to your needs as an individual customer. However, the problem which is also pointed out in the article is about data security and ownership. Who will own this data, which is your savings account data, your insurance data, your mutual funds data? Will the aggregator have ownership? Will the bank have ownership? Will you have ownership? This is a modus operandi which needs to be sorted out. But more than that, when it comes to data security, a small breach in the server of an account aggregator would mean that all your financial data is in front of everybody. So when we talk about this scheme itself, in the larger picture, it is quite important because yes, we have fragmentary data all over in the mutual fund sector. When we talk about insurance, when we talk about banking, when we talk about credit, all this data is fragmented. So there is a need. There is a need to make sure that all this data comes together. However, when we talk about who will have this data, how much access will be there is a major issue. And over and above that, the security of this data is equally important. So the article tries to flag 4 or 5 important issues. First, what is an account aggregator? Second, how will it help us as a consumer of all these products? And over and above that, the larger concern of data privacy and ownership. So I hope that you were able to understand through this article these new words which were introduced to you in the form of the account aggregator, and how this is where the future of banking, where one intermediary will have all your data, thereby making sure that you are seen as credit worthy and there is no gap, because the PAN card, which is actually used at this point of time as a linker of all these sectors from mutual funds, insurance, banking and credit, is quite fragmentary itself, because it is linked to the income tax department, thereby not giving us the right type of framework. So this is the attempt by the RBI to make a new beginning in this. With this, let's enter into the second last article which we are going to deal today, which is about the 2+2 minister dialogue between Australia and India. For the first time, and this is the first inaugural 2+2 dialogue between India and Australia. India and Australia have been coming together in different platforms, the Quad being an important platform. However, the context of this meeting is quite important with the Afghan crisis. The focus of this meeting was on Afghanistan itself. And why we are dealing with this article is because they specifically quoted a UN resolution, which is UN Resolution 2593. This is important because previously in the news, the UN resolution 1267 was quite important, but now 2593 has equally become important. So it is an inaugural meeting that in itself makes it an important moment in Indian history, because of the fact that now Australia has a 2+2 dialogue. But what is more important is the fact that now we have a UN resolution which was passed during our presidency in the UNSC. And what is this resolution and why is it important for your preparation? That is why we are dealing with it. The resolution deals that the Afghan territory should not be used to threaten, attack any country, or to shelter, train terrorists, or plan or finance terrorist acts. Meaning that with the Taliban takeover of Afghanistan, there is an imminent threat that Afghanistan is now going to become a terrorist heaven. And what the 2593, which was introduced and passed with India as the president of the UNSC, tries to emphasize is that we need to make sure that that does not happen. Over and above that, it also reiterates that it specifically mentions individuals and entities which are designated as UNSC global terrorist under UNSC resolution 1267, which is Lashkar-e-Taiba or Jaish-e-Mohammed, should also not get access to Afghanistan. The point of the matter is that Afghanistan at this point of time has become a major center of concern, and the Australia-India dialogue itself was dealing with this. We need to make sure that Afghanistan does not go into full chaos, which it already is in, and it does not become a safe haven for terrorists. Further, Australia tried to say that we need to ensure that those people who have visas of other countries and who wish to leave Afghanistan should be allowed to do so safely, because you have already seen the scenes of what was happening at the Afghanistan airport and what was happening at Kabul airport. So this is again a reassertion to make sure that the same scenes do not appear in the next 2 to 3 months, and people who want to leave Afghanistan at this point of time should be allowed to. Further, they were also focusing on the erosion of women rights. There was a major concern over the issue that women rights will now go down, and the Taliban is known to create a regime under which women rights are curbed and is taken back. There has been a lot of progress in the last 20 years where women have got access to employment, education and politics, and this Talibani move is being seen as a regression. And what Australia and India have again asserted is to make sure that along with travel, the women should not be repressed there. Further, what is more important to us for internal security and GS paper 3 is the two other things which were pointed out by them. First, the open and inclusive Indo-Pacific region. This is a message to China and technically an assertion of the Quad itself, where you have Japan, India, Australia, and USA are trying to technically balance China in a way. So the open and inclusive Indo-Pacific region concept is quite important, because this was a larger message which was being sent to China, that India and Australia now have a 2+2 dialogue, and we are now very conscious of the fact that the South China Sea should not become an issue. And over and above that, when we talk about the Indian Ocean, China has been trying to undercut the power of India, Australia, Japan, and USA. And this 2+2 dialogue is a very, very important step in that direction. So you can understand the meta issue which is linked to this topic and this article, and that is why reading current affairs becomes important, because all current affairs interacts with static in a way, and here you can see that. Last but not the least, and the most important for us as a form of cooperation, is that Australia has invited India to the exercise Talisman Sabre, which will be happening in 2023. So now India will be in a joint military exercise of USA, Australia, and India. This is again quite important, where we had expanded Malabar. Now Australia is ready to expand its Talisman Sabre to include India. Again, all of this is about flexing the Quad muscle, showing that Japan is not alone in the South China Sea and the Chinese cannot dominate the Indian Ocean. This is a very, very important point, and this article and this meeting itself is a breakthrough when it comes to Indo-Australian relationships. So please remember this point. Three very, very important points were made here. First, the 2023 joint exercise. Second, the concept of the Pacific. And third, UN Resolution 2593. The last article which we deal today is related to exports. And this is very, very important for a simple reason, because today India has been pushing to become an exporting nation, and we need to make sure that our balance of payment and our trade deficit is as minimal as possible. The context of the article then is the displeasure which has been expressed by the parliamentary panel over the implementation of the remission of duties and taxes on export products scheme. This scheme was quite important. However, the Ministry of Commerce and Industry and the Ministry of Finance at some level has been reprimanded by the parliamentary panel to not realize the importance of this scheme. So first we need to understand what is this scheme and thereby understand the larger issue. So this scheme is about that it refunds the exporters the embedded central, state and local duties or taxes that were so far not being rebated or refunded and were therefore placing India's export at a disadvantage. So in the tax regime in India, we already have the GST, and within GST, the IGST becomes important for the exporters. But the point is that when you are exporting something related to agriculture or other industries which get subsidies or are related to the agricultural sector, there are duties which are embedded in the form of duties and larger cesses and surcharges. The example for this would be the duty on power charges, value added tax, and the value added tax on transportation. Remember, petrol at this point of time is not under the GST regime, thereby making sure that the excise duty and the VAT which is on the petrol somehow compounds and makes our export non-competitive and technically removing our comparative advantage. So what the first reprimand is related to the implementation of this scheme. For us, the reprimand itself is not that important, but what this article gives us is an opportunity to understand how these schemes work. These schemes become important in your larger preparation. Further, what it also argues is that the government wants to promote domestic manufacturing of shipping containers to cope with the container shortage which is hurting exports, and promote Indian shipping lines, which currently accounts for only 10% of cargo movement in the country. The whole point of the matter is, in the context of the COVID-19 crisis and generally what is happening in the world economy, we are seeing a major container shortage. And what the government of India and the parliamentary panel is pointing out, that why are we waiting for other manufacturers to send us containers? We can manufacture containers in India itself and thereby negate this shortage. So the shortage of containers is equally important, and this can be used by you in GS paper 3 economy paper to tell what are the issues when it comes to our export economy. There's also another scheme which has been seen as a problem, and the parliamentary panel has again reprimanded the Ministry of Commerce and Industry, saying that the indecision on the continuation of the interest equalization scheme IES which gives you pre and post shipment rupee export credit to eligible exporters at a 3% lower interest rate, is not being implemented, and there's a lot of indecision if it will be continued or not. It has been there for a very long time. What the government of India wants is the extension for 5 more years, and this is a very important scheme because it technically gives you a form of loan or credit 3% lower than what you would get in the other banking sector or in the sector related to the NBFCs. But the point of the matter is that this scheme, which has been again been seen as a major push for exports, there's a lot of indecision in its implementation. Over and above that, the way the credit is being dispersed is also a problem. Further, we also see another term which has come into vogue in this article, which is called the risky exporters tag. So the risky exporter tag is given to an exporter when they claim fraudulent input tax credit. Input tax credit is related to the GST regime, in which if you have been paying GST or taxes on your input, you can get a rebate on the output GST, thereby removing what is called the cascading effect in economy and in the GST regime itself. And when an exporter tries to fraudulently claim that he has already given input tax credit, he is put under the risky exporters tag. However, what is happening is that because of operational problems, there is a lot of error in identification, and genuine exporters have now given the risky exporter tag, thereby removing them from the incentives such as the interest equalization scheme and the remission of duties scheme. So the point of this article is to understand 3 important things. First, what is this tag? Risky exporters tag. Over and above that, the 2 schemes which are again very important for your preparation. First, which is the interest equalization scheme, which is about giving credit at a lower rate than the market, and the remission of duty scheme, which is to make sure that all embedded taxes which are embedded in the larger issue of agriculture or the secondary sector on the primary sector, they are not transferred to the export economy, thereby making it uncompetitive. So with this, I hope that you again have an understanding of these 2 important schemes and the risky exporters tag. All these 5 articles deal with the current affairs and were part of the newspaper today. But why we are discussing it is because these 5 topics technically link up with the larger static issues, and you have to understand all these issues in the same context. All current affairs is linked to static, and that is why we are dealing with it in this context. With this, some mains questions for you out of the 5 articles. In light of the extension of the PLI scheme to the textile sector, discuss how this scheme will benefit the man-made fibers and technical textile segments of the industry. Second, financial data aggregation is the need of the hour. Critically analyze the statement with regards to the recent developments in licensing of account aggregators by the RBI. So you have to talk about the textile sector, how the PLI scheme is going to help us, and over and above that, you can really use the data when we talk about how only 35% is the consumption and manufacturing, and that is nothing comparable to the world. In the second one, you have to talk about how account aggregation will be very important in the future of finance in India, but the problems also related to it. With this, I would like to thank you for your patience. Thank you for watching this video. If you've not subscribed to our channel, please do. Thank you, and we will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.